Well, I'm here at the Wesley Boland Memorial Plaza. It's right across from our state capitol, and I don't know if you've been here before, but this is my first time ever coming here, and this is the kind of place that as you walk around, you just realize is full of story and histories. There's a memorial here for Martin Luther King Jr. There's another memorial for the 9/11. And I'm standing right beside a monument for the Bill of Rights. And then I can see right through here another monument for the Ten Commandments. This is the kind of place that honors and remembers and recognizes those men and women who paid the ultimate sacrifice for the freedoms that we all enjoy. Celebration of Memorial Day dates back to the late 1800s, right after the Civil War, when people would visit the graves of fallen soldiers, and it was called Decoration Day because they would decorate those graves with flags and flowers in a way that they could memorialize and remember the sacrifice that those soldiers made for us. It wasn't until 1966 that it became officially recognized as a national holiday. But this Memorial Day feels different. In a sense, because of this pandemic, we're all thinking about freedom a lot. When's the next time we're gonna get to go to a baseball game? Or when am I gonna get to go to a restaurant again and not have to worry about social distancing? Am I still gonna have to homeschool my kids when the fall rolls around? When do we get to all be at church again together? It seems like this Memorial Day, more than any other, is a sobering reminder of the immense gratitude that we have for the freedoms that we all love, and it's because of the sacrifice of our nation's greatest heroes and their families. So as we begin to enjoy these freedoms that are going to slowly begin integrating themselves back into our lives, may we always remember, may we never forget, and may we appropriately memorialize the families and the heroes of our great nation.
Lord bless you and keep you, make his face shine upon and be gracious to you. The Lord turn his face toward you and give you peace. The Lord bless you and keep you, make his face shine upon and be gracious to you. The Lord turn his face toward you and give you peace. The Lord bless you and keep you, make his face shine upon you and be gracious to you. The Lord turn his face toward you and give you peace.
generations, and your family, and your children, and their children, and their children. May his favor be upon you, and 1,000 generations, and your family, and your children, and their children, and their children. May his favor be upon you, and 1,000 generations, and your family, and your children, and their children, and their children. May his favor be upon you, and 1,000 generations, and your family, and your children, and your children, and their children. May his presence go before you, and behind you, and beside you, all around you, and within you. He is with you, he is with you, in the morning, in the evening, in your coming, and your going, in your weeping, and rejoicing. He is for you, 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 he is for you.
That's a blessing to you and your families today, especially our Gold Star families out there on this Memorial Day weekend. We are so grateful from the bottom of our hearts, so grateful for you and your sacrifice and your loved one's sacrifice for us and our freedom, the freedom to rejoice and lift up praise to our God, even in this digital season. To join together, we have that freedom because of your sacrifice. So thank you today. Now, if you're joining us for the very first time or a first time in a long time, thanks for being with us. And to all of you, do me a favor, do us a favor, and just drop a share. You never know who's watching your feed, scrolling through your feed, and needs to hear the word that God is for them. He's for them, he's with them, and there's nothing that he can't do. Let's sing that today. There's nothing our God can't do.
Just one word, you calm the storm that surrounds me. And just one word, the darkness has to retreat. And just one touch, I feel the presence of heaven. And just one touch, my eyes are open to see. My heart can't help but believe. There's nothing that a God can't do. There's not a mountain that he can't move. Oh, praise the name that makes a way. There's nothing that our God can't do. Just one word, heal what's broken inside me. And just one word, and you revive every dream. And just one touch, I feel the power of heaven. And just one touch, my eyes are open to see. My heart can't help but believe. There's nothing that our God can't do. There's not a mountain that He can't move. Oh, praise the name that makes a way. There's nothing that our God can't do. There's nothing that our God can't do. There's not a prison wall He can't break through. Oh, praise the name that makes a way. There's nothing that our God can't do. I will believe for greater things. There's no power like the power of Jesus. Let faith arise, let all agree. There's no power like the power of Jesus. I will believe for greater things. There's no power like the power of Jesus. Let faith arise, let all agree. There's no power like the power of Jesus. I will believe for greater things. There's no power like the power of Jesus. Let faith arise, let all agree. There's no power like His power. There's nothing that our God can't do. There's not a mountain that He can't move. Oh, praise the name that makes a way. There's nothing that our God can't do. There's nothing that our God can't do. There's not a prison wall He can't break through. Oh, praise the name that makes a way. There's nothing that our God can't do.
Before He spoke creation, the God of heaven knew our names. And formed in His reflection, we are His glory on display. And His heart is good, He is always kind. With the cross He proved He is on our side. We are the sons, we are the daughters of God. No matter where we go, we're close to the Father's heart. And though we stumble, He will not let us fall. We are the Lord's, and lavished on us. He called us children of the King. In His loving kindness, He chose the lonely and the weak. And His heart is good. He is always kind. With the cross He proved He is on our side. We are the sons, we are the daughters of God. No matter where we go, we're close to the Father's heart. And though we stumble, He will not let us fall. We are the Lord's, and He will never forsake His own. We are the sons, we are the daughters of God. Yes, we are. Oh, oh, oh. So when the lies speak louder than the truth, remind me that I belong to You. And when I can't see past the dark of the night, would You remind me You're always by my side? So when the lies speak louder than the truth, remind me that I belong to You. And when I can't see past the dark of the night, would You remind me You're always by my side? You're by my side. We are the sons, we are the daughters of God. No matter where we go, we're close to the Father's heart. Though we stumble, He will not let us fall. We are the Lord's, and He will never forsake His own. We are the sons, we are the daughters of God.
Hello, friends. It is so good to be with you right now in this moment. I long for the day that we all get to be together again in this room together, but I'm so grateful that even right now, whether you're watching this on your phone or on a computer or you're sitting on the couch watching this on the TV, we're sharing this moment together and we're here together today. So thank you so much for being here. I want to recognize, I actually want to celebrate a specific group of people right now who deserve to be celebrated. If you are a mom or a dad or a parent or a guardian who has been unexpectedly homeschooling your kids for the last 8 to 12 weeks, I want you to stand up and take a bow. We're actually going to celebrate you right now. Because it is now officially summer and you have done it. So good for you. I know your kids were excited to be done, but I know that you were excited to be done. And I know this has been hard and this has been challenging, but you have done it. As a next generation pastor here at Mission, I'm so excited of what we've been able to continue to do for the next generation, for kids and teenagers throughout this quarantine season. And I'm so proud of our staff and our volunteers and our leaders who've continued to lean into your kids and invest in them in significant ways. You know, every single week we continue to push out new content for families to watch together, for kids to engage with. And we literally have hundreds of volunteers who have been on Zoom calls and other ways to continue to connect with hundreds of kids, small groups. And so as we enter into the summer, where it's a great time to take a break and to be refreshed, I want to encourage you and encourage your kids to continue to lean into these relationships. And let's just trust God to see what he's going to do in this season. Well, actually, there's two things I'm really excited about that actually launched this week that I think you're going to be very excited about as well. This week, Nick Asolis, who's on staff with me, myself, we recorded a podcast, an episode on the Thriving Life podcast, and it's all themed around technology and kids. And so if you have kids at home and they have access to a phone or to a tablet or to online streaming services, this episode is for you, because as parents, we have to learn to navigate this technology to make sure that we do the best we can to protect our kids from the scary things that are online, but also we need to learn to navigate the conversations that we need to have with our kids as they inevitably bump up against the scary things online. And we unpack that on this episode, and we actually unpack a framework of keeping your kids safe online that most parents have never considered before. So be sure to check that out. Number two, this is also something we're really excited about. This is something we've been working on for months and really dreaming about for years. But this week we launched missionparents.org. It's a brand new website specifically designed for you as a parent. We want to help you win. And on this site, there's a blog to inspire and challenge. We highlight some amazing resources that we think every parent needs to own or to have to help them win. And we have tons of resources that you can download that will help you be a better parent. So be sure to check out missionparents.org. All that information is right there for you. Well, again, we're going to continue to worship. We're going to worship through giving. And, you know, I just want to say that I am so proud to be at a church that invests in the next generation the way that this church does, the way that our leaders think about the next generation. And I want to thank you as a church that invest financially into what we do for the next generation here. So as we worship through our giving, I just want to thank you for that as we continue to invest that way. But before we do that, I want to pray for you and your family. Father, we love you. We thank you so much for who you are. We thank you for the opportunity to gather together and to worship and to pray and to pay attention to what you're doing and what you're speaking to us. And Lord, as we move into this summer where so many of us are frazzled and tired and anxious, Lord, I pray that this would be a season where you fill us up. And Lord, I pray that you fill us up with your peace and with joy and with excitement for what you want to continue to do in us and through us and in our community. And so, Father, we're so grateful for what you want to continue to do in these things. Lord, we give you this time, we give you this service. In Jesus' name I pray, amen.
The Lord bless you and keep you, make his face shine upon you and be gracious to you. The Lord turn his face toward you and give you peace. The Lord bless you and keep you, make his face shine upon you and be gracious to you. The Lord turn his face toward you and give you peace.
Well, over the last several weeks, as the world around us has been talking about and strategizing about rebooting life organizationally and rebooting life culturally and rebooting life economically, we've been focused on what it looks like to reboot life personally. And one of the things we said the very first week, as we're talking about the things that need to be recovered or the things we need to recover from, is specifically that not everything that can be recovered should be recovered. And in the first week, I gave you this framework that I've sort of been working through and we've been utilizing organizationally here. And it was just to kind of give us an idea of the fact that there were things that happened that were going on in our lives before the COVID-19 season that were positive and negative, and things that in the COVID season that have been positive and things that have been negative. And we've been focused specifically on the things that we need to leave behind from the previous season that have sort of been illuminated in this season, and the things that need to be carried forward, the things that we've discovered in this season that are things that we thought, oh gosh, that's something I didn't recognize about my life that it was missing, or something that I didn't recognize about my life that was broken. That's something that needs to be carried forward. And today I want to talk about something that I see an opportunity for us to carry forward. It's a powerful dynamic in our culture, and it's a powerful dynamic in our lives, in our families, and in our local community. Before we get to that though, I want to start with an observation. Isn't it interesting the amount of national unity we've experienced in this season, unlike we've experienced in a really, really long time? In fact, I would say it's been probably since 9/11 in 2001, since we've seen the sort of unity that we've seen in this season. Now, to be sure, there's still a divide, but even on Capitol Hill, a $4 trillion bill was unanimously passed for the sake of rebooting our economy or investing in our economy. Now, I know there was one dissenter, but he's crazy. But the reality is we sort of all joined together to do something, all of our politicians to do something for the betterment, or even for probably the safety and the recovering of our national economy. And it's also interesting that we've joined together, not just nationally, but personally. We've joined together as a society to do things that are uncomfortable, things that are unnatural for us, things that are certainly inconvenient, even I would say in some instances irritating. We've joined together to do a bunch of things for the sake of our society, for our society as a whole. We've even done things that are frightening, which reminds me, this last week, my wife and I were walking into a furniture store because we're doing a project, and I had to laugh as I looked at myself in the window because I thought, this is frightening. Like, when else in history can I walk into a store looking like this and somebody not call 911 or press a panic button or escort me out of the store? I mean, it's just so interesting, all the things we've been doing in our society. But here's my question. My question is, what is it? What do you think it is specifically that's unified us? What specifically has brought this sort of unity to our society and to our culture? In some cases, to our political leaders who are, sort of almost hopelessly divided. What is it specifically that's unified? Is it a common goal? Is it common good? Is it common interest? I mean, I think all of those things are good answers, but here's what I would argue. I would argue that the thing that's unified us is an unseen common enemy. When you think about it, when you boil it all the way down, the truth is it's the unseen common enemy of this virus that has sort of rallied us. It's unified us. It brought us together to fight against something, and that's because things that are common enemies have a way of unifying us. I mean, for a brief moment, think about the miracle of this. For a brief moment, the primary enemy of the left was not the right, and the primary enemy of the right was not the left. Here's why. It's a powerful principle. A common enemy has a way of bringing people together. Now, we experience this every year in early February. As we all turn on our TVs to watch the Super Bowl, every single year, we all decide, we agree together to join together and cheer for the exact same team. Some of you are thinking, we do? We all join together? Yes, every year we join together and we decide we're all gonna cheer against whoever is playing the Patriots. Am I not true? Is that not true? I mean, we have to all agree on that. We just decide whoever's playing the Patriots Patriots in the Super Bowl, at least as of recent, we're cheering for that team. It's also interesting, though, maybe for the first time in history, some of us may actually decide to cheer for Tom Brady, like we never have in history, because he's no longer playing with the Patriots. But here's why I bring this up today. Here's the irony of this whole circumstance, this whole dynamic that we've experienced with this national unity, with this local unity, with this unity even within our church that we've experienced in this season. The irony is a more powerful, unseen common enemy preceded the COVID-19 virus for all of us. And in more subtle ways, this enemy was altering, in some cases ruling and dictating our lives in completely different ways. And Jesus actually addressed this very dynamic. He talked about this enemy. In fact, he talked about this enemy over and over. And I want to look at one of my favorite places where he addresses this enemy that we experience. If you have a Bible, I'd love for you to open it to the Gospel of John. It's one of 4 accounts of Jesus' life. John chapter 10, we're going to begin in verse 1 in just a second. Let me give you a little bit of context for what we're going to read, these verses we're going to read together. Jesus has just healed a blind man. And this is going to sound absurd to you, but this is what actually happened. Jesus has healed a blind man and people start complaining. And it's the teachers and the leaders of the law, sort of the ones who are the most experts in the law. They are the ones who start complaining, and they're the ones who sort of start criticizing Jesus publicly. And here's why: because he violated one of the laws, one of their religious laws, because it was the Sabbath. And healing someone, in their minds, constituted work. And so Jesus has violated the Sabbath, even though he's healed someone, which sounds absurd, but to them, it was a big deal. So Jesus takes the time to talk to them about their spiritual blindness and how you're so focused on this law and the letter of the law that you've missed the spirit of the law. You've missed it altogether, and they don't really understand. So he decides he's going to use a metaphor. Now, he's going to use a metaphor that is not one that is common in our culture, but it was incredibly common in their culture. In fact, they would have needed no context or understanding to understand this metaphor. But Jesus is going to talk about a sheep pen, which actually in ancient Palestine was called a sheepfold. And a sheepfold would look like this. And the reason this is important, because a sheepfold had one way in and one way out, and it had these high walls on it. And this is one that's sort of broken down, and it sort of obviously has been eroded, but you can see how they would build up these walls and these sheep pens so that wolves and other animals couldn't get in to get the sheep. It was sort of a safe haven for these sheep, and they would build them around different areas where they would take their sheep to graze. Here's a reconstruction of a modern one that you could go visit. This is somewhere in the Middle East, but this is what the idea of it was. And the important thing to note is that all of these sheep pens typically had one way in and they had one way out. And many times they had a gate, or for sure a gatekeeper that would stand in the middle of the gate or would block off that gate. And Jesus is going to tell a story, and he's going to use the metaphor of a sheep pen to help them understand what they're missing when they're criticizing him for what he's doing. So here's how Jesus begins in John chapter 10, beginning in verse 1. He says, "Very truly, I tell you, Pharisees," who were the sort of the leaders and the experts in the law, "anyone who does not enter the sheep pen by the gate, but climbs in by some other way is a thief and a robber," which just makes sense. I mean, there's somebody who's trying to steal or hurt or capture the sheep. But the one who enters by the gate is the shepherd of the sheep. The robbers and the thieves, they don't enter through the gate. They try to come in another way. And here's why: because there's a gatekeeper, and the gatekeeper opens the gate for him. He opens the gate for the shepherd. And the sheep listen to his voice, the shepherd's voice. And he calls his own sheep by name, and he leads them out of the sheep pen. So the gatekeeper guards the gate. Sometimes they would even at night sleep in the way, the opening. If there wasn't a physical gate on there, it was known that they would sort of sleep in the middle, so the gatekeeper could actually even be the gate sometimes. That made it safe for the sheep who were being kept in the pen, especially overnight, from, thieves and robbers, but also from other wild animals that would mean them harm. And the gatekeeper was the one who would let the shepherd in. The shepherd would come in and he would lead the sheep out. And he would lead the sheep out to safe pasture where they could graze. And he would lead them out when it was safe at the right times, when he could sort of lead them out of the pasture. And we're told, John goes on, he says, when he brings them out, brings out all of his own sheep, he goes ahead of them. and his sheep follow him because they know his voice. The sheep who hear his voice when he calls, they follow him out of the sheep pen. Now, this is important too because unlike cattle in our day, they didn't drive sheep. The sheep followed the shepherd. The shepherd would walk out in the front and the sheep would follow the shepherd. They would listen to his voice and he would guide and he would direct them. And he would do it primarily with his voice. This is similar to how many of us guide and direct our kids or our pets, and they understand because they hear our voice and they don't listen to other people the way they listen to us. As a matter of fact, we've got our kids trained. I think I've told you this before, but like we'll be in a store like Target, for instance, which I just say privately, personally for me, I've been so grateful for social distancing and quarantine because I haven't had to go to Target much in this season. I know some of you have been to Target, you've been going to Target, but it was a good excuse for me not to have to go to Target. But sometimes when we're in Target, we let our kids go off and they go off in different places and it's time to go. And literally our kids know, and I don't have to yell, I'm gonna go chasing for them. They understand the consequences if they don't come when they hear us. And what specifically they're listening for is this. Let me try that again. I just whistle real quick, just that little volume, that little sort of sound of my whistle, and they come running. They come from wherever they are. They'll come from 3 or 4 rows over, and they'll come and they just join us. They know it's time to go, and if they don't, they're 1, gonna get left, but 2, they're gonna be in a lot of trouble later on. So they come running, and it's the same thing. Jesus says this is the same idea. Jesus says that's what happens. They listen to the voice of the shepherd. He says this, but they'll never follow a stranger. These sheep, they don't follow strangers. In fact, they'll run away from them because they don't recognize the stranger's voice. But to which I go, but they're sheep, and aren't sheep known for being dumb? And like, you begin to think about this and go, well, how is that even possible? And how do they know the difference? Well, it's the same way your kids know the difference. They know the difference in your voice. They know the difference of your whistle. They know the difference of your instructions. And there's 2 specific factors. And I just want to break this down and get super practical. There's 2 factors as to how the sheep know the voice of the shepherd, how your kids know your voice, how we know the voice of the shepherd, God, Father, who wants to lead us. And here's how. It's by proximity first. And this is about following closely. In the metaphor, the sheep would follow closely to the shepherd, so they became familiar to his voice because as he talked, they were close up. It wasn't like some distant voice and they couldn't discern it. They were always following closely to the shepherd, which begs this question. How closely do you follow the shepherd? How closely are you following the voice of the shepherd? Would you say you hear the voice of the shepherd? Would you say that you respond to the voice of the shepherd when he's leading you and he's guiding you? Are your ears and your heart attuned to the voice of the shepherd who's speaking to you, who's always speaking, who speaks to us through prayer and speaks to us through his word, who speaks to us through circumstances in life? How closely are you following the voice of the shepherd? Are you following it as closely as you follow the news? Or the stock market, or politics, or social media? See, one of the reasons the sheep could recognize the voice of the shepherd is because they followed closely along with the shepherd. The second is frequency. They not only followed closely, they listened regularly. They listened often. This is the question. How frequently are you listening to the voice of the shepherd? I'll ask it again this way. Are you listening as frequently as you listen to the news? As you listen to the news of the stock market and to politicians, to social media? I mean, what are the voices you're listening to on a regular basis? What are the voices you listen to the most? What are the voices that you follow most closely and you listen to most regularly? Those are the voices that are leading you through life. See, here's the problem. The problem is that some of us have become too familiar with some of these voices. We've spent too much time around these voices. We've spent too much time around voices that Jesus would have described as a stranger's voice, a thief's voice, and a robber's voice. And that's why they sound familiar to us, is because we've been listening to these voices too long. I think there's two voices in this season that we've been tempted to listen to too much. One is the voice of worry, and I hear this all the time, and this is no judgment, but the voice of worry says, hey, nothing is certain. You need to be afraid of everything. You need to, have a backup to a backup to a backup for your plans. There's nothing that's certain out there. To which some of you go, no, that's just good planning, that's prudence. Jesus might say, but that's not what my voice says. My voice says there are things you can depend on. There are things that are certain in life. There's a love that is certain. There's a provision that is certain. There's a presence that is certain. And the voices of worry that come into our heads, they try to get us focused, hyper-focused on things that are sort of out of our control. As a matter of fact, it's a result of an anxiety to things that are beyond our control. Anytime there's things that are beyond our control, we begin to worry about those things. We're worried in this season about recovering health physically as a nation. We're worried about recovering our businesses or in our jobs professionally. We're worried about recovering fiscally or financially, personally. Some of us are worried about recovering in certain relational contexts, certainly economically. But here's the thing. In this season, there's so much content for the enemy or the thieves or the robbers, the stranger's voice to begin to speak into our minds and speak into our ears. Now, I just want to relieve you. I'm not talking about things that are legitimate cause for concern. I'm talking about things that are uncertain, that are beyond our control. You see, some of us tend to have an obsession with the uncertain. It's not things that are actually happening to us. I'm not talking about things that are actually causing crisis. I'm talking about the what ifs out there. Here's my question for you. How often do you give voice? How often do you talk out loud about the what ifs that are in your head? How often do you actually say, well, what if this? Or what if that happens? Or what if this is a result of that? So there's so many opportunities in this season for the voice of the stranger to speak the what ifs into our minds and drown out the voice of the shepherd who's actually trying to lead us in a direction and asking us to trust him, to follow him. Because the voice of worry always is going, but what if, but what if, but what if? But God, if I do that, what if this? But God, if I follow you in that direction, what if this? But God, if I do what your word says, what if? And those voices of what if have a way of leading us through life. Some of our lives and our headspace is filled with worry because of the proximity and frequency with which we allow those voices to enter into our minds and into our hearts. The voice of worry that tells us there's nothing that's certain can keep us from listening to the voice of the shepherd who's saying, no. My way, the way in which I'm leading you, it is certain. It can be trusted. You can follow me. The second voice is the voice of hurry. And the voice of hurry says you're missing out. And this is a product of a more is more culture, which is what we live in. You've heard this phrase, less is more. That is a leadership cliche. Nobody actually lives that way. Nobody actually operates that way. It sounds good. It preaches good. It's great for an inspirational speech. But the truth is we live in a more is more society, and we're always feeling like we're missing out. All marketing, all those messages you see in life, they're trying to tell you that you're missing out on certain things in life. And because of that, we're all in a hurry. We're in a hurry to get more things. We're in a hurry to get things done. We're in a hurry. Some of you are in a hurry to get out of high school, to get out of college, to get your business off the ground, to get back to business. Many of us are in a hurry to recover from this season that we're in. We're not as focused on what God might have been doing as he led us into this season. We're in a hurry to get out of this and to recover and to get back to other things. And these voices in this season that are coming into our minds are speaking certain things that in some cases even sound good logically, but they're not the voice of the shepherd. They're actually a voice of a stranger that you and I have become very accustomed to hearing on a regular basis. We hear them on the news, and we read them in our social media feed, and we read them online. And the truth is these voices are shaping and leading us more than just about anything else in our life. But here's something you need to know about the shepherd. When it comes to trying to hurry, that we're this idea that we're all in a hurry to get somewhere or get to the next season or get to the next success or get to the next deal or get to the next stage. Here's what you need to know. You can't move at a faster pace than the shepherd is leading you. You can't move at a quicker pace than the shepherd is walking. And the shepherd, who's always speaking, who's always leading, he wants to lead you, and he's gonna lead you at his pace. See, here's the problem though. Many of us, early in life, we started listening to these voices early and often in life. And some of these voices actually represent specific voices from our past. People in our past that had a significant influence, positive or negative, but they had a significant influence on our life. And some of these voices trained us. We were trained to listen to some of these voices from an early age. They come from people we looked up to, people at a young age we wanted to be like, people at a young age whose approval we were looking for. And we've listened to certain voices. There are certain messages that we recall over and over that lead us, that sometimes not only are in contradiction with the voice of the shepherd, they actually, because they're playing over and over and over in our minds, they're actually voices that have the potential to drown out the voice of the shepherd in our lives. And so Jesus is trying to point out something to us that's significant, that's important. That there are lots of other voices, but here's what you need to know. There's only one voice of the shepherd, and this voice of the shepherd, he has your best interest at heart, and he's speaking, he's communicating, and he's leading. And the truth is if you'll listen to his voice, he'll lead you into safety, he'll lead you out into safety, he'll provide for you, he'll care for you. He has your best interest at heart. So my question is, are you certain that that's true about all the other voices in your life? All these other voices that we listen to, some because we think they sound smart or because their logic is good or because maybe they're the loudest or most consistent voice or they have the biggest title. I mean, what is the voice that's guiding you most in your life? What are you listening to most frequently? Who are you listening to most closely? Jesus used this as a metaphor. In fact, John goes on, he tells us Jesus used this figure of speech or this metaphor, but the Pharisees, they missed it. They weren't listening. They didn't understand what he was telling them. He tried with his first pass, but like before when he was talking about spiritual blindness, they didn't get it. So he's gonna try a third pass now. He's gonna try again to explain to them what he means, and he takes another shot at it. So this is what Jesus said. He said again, he said, "Very truly I tell you, I am the gate." Now this was different, this was new. I am the gate for the sheep. I'm actually the one that kind of keeps everything else out, and I'm the one that actually lets people out and lets people in. He claimed to be the only way in or out, which begs the question, in or out of what? He's gonna get to that in a minute. But Jesus is making an exclusive claim to be the only way. He says, all others who've come before me, which I actually love that phrase. If you're taking notes, you should write that down. All others who've come before me are thieves and robbers, but the sheep have not listened to them. He's saying those who are actually my sheep that are safe, that are in the fold, in my sheepfold, the reality is they didn't listen to all those others who came before me. Now, and I'll just say this, I don't think he's just talking about time-wise. Maybe he was in this story, I don't know. But I think all other voices that come before both in time and in priority to the voice of the shepherd are voices that we shouldn't be listening to. My question for you is, as we continue to press in a little bit, is what other voices in your life come before the voice of your Savior? Come before the voice of Jesus, either in terms of what it says about you or where it's leading you What other voices come before Jesus? Jesus said, I'm the gate. Whoever enters through me will be saved. They will come in and they will go out and they will find pasture, or they will be safe. Jesus is saying, look, if you want to be safe, if you want to find the best, if you don't want to have to worry, if you don't want to have to be in a hurry, and know that there's someone looking out for you, there's someone leading you that has your best interest at heart, and they're planning to lead you in and out of all circumstances of life and lead you to pasture, which represents goodness, things of blessing, things that are bountiful. That's what this represents. I mean, if you want to be able to trust that, here's what you need to know. There's a voice that's leading you. And Jesus said, I'm the only way, I'm the only gate for you to be able to experience that. I'm the only one who can rescue you and free you from the voices of worry and the voices of hurry. The voices that in this season are taking advantage of the circumstances and are filling your minds and filling your hearts with messages that are potentially leading you out into danger, out into the open, away from the sheepfold, away from the voice of the shepherd. Then Jesus, in one of my favorite verses in all the scriptures, he sort of sums up what he's saying. He kind of gets to the bottom line of not just what the point of this metaphor is, but I believe the point of Jesus's entire life. He sort of gives us his purpose statement. He starts it this way. He says, listen, here's what you need to know about the thief, or these strangers, or these robbers. The thief comes only to steal and to kill and to destroy. But, Jesus says, I have come that they may have life and have it to the full. I've come that you may have life and that you may have it everlastingly, maybe your translation says, that you may have it abundantly. In fact, this is this Greek word right here, perissos. And this word perissos, it means everlasting or overflowing or superior or uncommon. Jesus said, here's the deal. I'm the gate, and here's where I'm going to lead you. Here's why I've come. I've come so that you can have an everlasting life, a life nobody can ever take away from you, a life that's overflowing, that's not overflowing like it's too full. It's overflowing with blessing, a life that's superior, a life that's uncommon to what other people are experiencing. The thief, he's come for a different reason. He came to steal and to kill and to destroy. I came that you could have an overflowing, thriving life. This is Jesus' claim. I'm the only way. I'm the only way to enter into this type of fullness of life. This is the point of the gate. Only way to enter in to this type of fullness of life, Jesus is saying, is through me. Now, I want to get super practical. There is a difference between a full life, and you know this, and having life to the full. There's a difference between having a life that is full and experiencing life to the full. Some of you know what I'm talking about. You know what I'm talking about because as you've done the exercise, as you kind of went through this chart, some of you, as you did some reflection, you did your ruthless personal moral inventory, you began to discover that in the previous season, prior to COVID-19, there was a season of life where you were experiencing a fullness, but it wasn't an everlasting life type of fullness. It was an exhausting life type of fullness. You know what I'm talking about? Some of you would have said your life was so full of activities and obligations and commitments, or over-commitments in some cases. Over-commitments professionally and socially and personally and in terms of activities. And here's my observation. I just, as I talk to people, in my experience, more often than not, here's what happens. We allow the voices of life that tell us you're missing out. The voices of life saying there's nothing certain, so make sure you have a lot of extra, and make sure you have a backup to a backup to a backup, and you have lots of reserves, things that sound really good. They sound really responsible. But they're things that are really driven by the voices of worry and the voices of hurry. They cause us to fill up our lives with stuff upon stuff that is in reality a tragic substitute for the fullness of life that Jesus offers us. filling up our life with stuff and extra and reserves doesn't actually lead us to a fullness of life, specifically the fullness of life that Jesus was talking about. The kind of full life that we were experiencing prior to COVID-19, some of you, you know what you'd say? You'd say it was actually killing you. It was something that was really wrecking your life. It was stealing you of years. It was causing you to miss and sort of rob you of some of the years of your life, years of your kids' lives maybe as they're young, because of certain things, because of certain voices. Maybe they were echoing voices of the past, the voices of worry and hurry that are because of the uncertainty, because you were in such a hurry to get the next thing because you were afraid you were gonna miss out. We're actually stealing life from you. It was actually killing you, not leading you towards a fullness of life. Here's what you need to know. The thief doesn't steal and kill and destroy all in one fell swoop. He rarely does that. It's usually, speaking of metaphors, it's like the death by 1,000 paper cuts. He's hopping the fence over and over and over of our lives, coming in and whispering lies into our ears, leading us astray, leading us out into danger, causing us to add and fill up our lives with things that don't actually bring us a fullness of life. I love the way Bob Goff talks about this. He says the enemy doesn't have to destroy us if he can distract us. Isn't it true that that's what often happens to us? That's what's often happened to us when it comes to the voice of the shepherd. The truth is we've been so busy, we've filled our lives so full that for some of us, prior to the COVID-19 season when everything stopped, we couldn't hear the voice of the shepherd. There was too much noise. There was too much busyness. We were in too much of a hurry. We were in too much of a worry about all the things around us and all the things that we had going on and all the plates that were spinning and worrying about dropping those that we didn't actually have time to hear the voice of the shepherd. Many of us couldn't resist the temptation to fill up our lives so full that God slowly began to be crowded out of our lives, out of our priorities, out of our budgets, out of our schedules. In this season, God got our attention, didn't he? How'd he do it? I'll tell you. He eliminated the competition. Many of the things that were on our schedules, many of the commitments and overcommitments, they stopped. And in this season, it was almost like the voices of all those things for a brief moment were shut down. And the truth is we began to hear the voice of God again, the voice of the shepherd. We began to tune in. We began to connect. We began to look up towards God and not just out towards other voices to lead us in life. You see, the full life we had before, the full life that was too full, that was overfull and not in a good way, not like overflowing with blessing, but it was just overflowing. That represents the work of an unseen common enemy in your life and in my life. And my question is, what's your plan for dealing with all of this? What's your plan for following closely and listening regularly on the other side of this season? For some of you, God got your attention in this season. And for some of us, it was a painful way he got our attention. But he got your attention. What's your plan for continuing to focus your attention on the voice of the shepherd before, in priority over, as a voice that is a primary voice leading you as you're rebooting your life? Daily, how are you through prayer and opening God's word, allowing God's voice, the voice of the shepherd, to be heard in your life? How are you staying close? Weekly, how are you going to continue to worship as all the things come back and they start competing? How weekly are you going to commit to worship, commit to gathering with other believers and accountability and having discussions about things like this? I'll just tell you, for some of you, it's not too late. Some of you got started in the 21-day reboot. Some of you never got started in the 21-day reboot. You never even signed up. But here's the thing, it's not too late. you can actually still join the 21-day reboot. It's a way to actually begin a new pattern. For 21 days, begin a new habit of listening to the voice of the shepherd. It's really easy. If you want to start with us, you don't even have to do anything other than send a text, which is something you do all the time. You just text reboot, the word reboot, to 474747. It's going to come up on the screen. Text reboot to 474747. You'll start on day 1. And it'll lead you through 21 days of listening to the voice of the shepherd. Jen and I recently were having a conversation about this very thing. And we were talking about how in this season, we've secretly, and it's not gonna be a secret after I tell all of you, but secretly as we were laying in bed processing a specific day, it was a really good day at home, a really great day as a family. We were just laying there just going, hasn't it been nice to sort of not have all the commitments and obligations that we have had? And actually, as we had that conversation, it was sort of convicting. I sort of began to think about that more and more. And I started thinking about all the things that we have going on, and, you know, the kids' activities and sports and church commitments and serving commitments and work commitments and family commitments and social commitments and small group and things that we have every night of the week. In fact, I started thinking about, I was like, man, we didn't realize, but these things, we added them over time, little things. We added, and it was crazy. And as things started to be adding back, I just said to my wife, I was like, I don't want to go back. I don't want to go back. She said, what do you mean? I said, I don't want to go back. I don't want to go back to what we were doing before. You're getting up really early in the morning and you're off and you're going to do your thing. When you get home, I go to work. And then I'm at work all day, and then I come home and we have a few minutes. I actually go to the gym, and then I come home. We have a few minutes together as a family. We eat dinner because that's a priority. But then we all go our separate ways again. And some of us go to soccer practice, some of us go to dance, some of us have other activities. And it was like, and I said, I feel like this every night of the week. I don't want to go back to that. Like, I didn't realize in the time being, it felt like it was all good stuff. But the reality is I didn't realize how slowly it was just like, it was killing me. Now, some of you are looking at it going, okay, so what are you gonna do about it? You wanna know what I'm gonna do about it? I don't know, but I'm not going back. In fact, the first step I took was this week in our small group. I said it out loud to our group. I said, hey, I don't have many decisions about this, but like, here's what our life was like before, and we're not going back to that. We thought we had a healthy rhythm, but I realize now we're not. I don't want to go back to that. And I don't know exactly what we're gonna do yet, but here's what we're doing first, is I said it out loud to our group because I knew it would create some accountability. I knew that they would all go, well, if you go back to that, we're gonna ask you questions like, hey, why are you going back to all of that? But as a lot of that starts cranking back up, here's what we've decided. And this is sort of the goal. If you're looking for a goal today, a practical thing, here's our goal. Our goal is to figure out how to listen to the voice of the shepherd. Some of those things are good. Some of those things are gonna lead us to the goodness God has for us. But in reality, some of those things are gonna lead us away. They're gonna lead us astray. They're gonna lead us into danger. And they're actually gonna kill us. They're gonna kill our relationships. They're gonna sort of cause us to miss. They're gonna rob us of years that we have that are precious years as a family. So I don't know what I'm gonna do about that specifically, but I do know that as every opportunity comes up, we're gonna listen to the voice of the shepherd. We're gonna prioritize staying close. We're gonna prioritize listening regularly to the voice of the shepherd. Now, some of you here's your question is, well, how do I know I can trust the voice of the shepherd? Here's what Jesus said. He closed this whole section. He said, I am the good shepherd. I'm good. You can trust me because I'm good. Some of you go, well, how do I know you're good? You ready for this? Jesus said, I am the good shepherd. You can trust my voice. And here's why you can trust my voice, is because the good shepherd lays down his life for his sheep. Okay, just as a rule of thumb, I'll just give you my suggestion today. You can trust the voice of somebody who's willing to die for you. How many of the voices you listen to on the news? How many of the voices you listen to as it relates to financial advice? How many of the voices you listen to in culture and on social media, how many of those voices are willing to lay down their life for you? Probably not many. The shepherd said, here's how you can trust that I'm gonna lead you toward what is good for you. I've already proven it because I laid down my life for you. You can trust my voice. Stay close, listen regularly, and I will lead you to a fullness of life, not a full life, a fullness of life that is uncommon, but that is overwhelmingly satisfying, because that's what I've done. I've come to lead people to life to the full. Let me pray for you. God, today, may we be people who follow the voice of the shepherd, who pause each day to listen keenly to the voice of the shepherd, who are careful about the voices we're allowing to lead us through life. May we be a people who experience an uncommon, overflowing life that's a true fullness of life, because we were close enough, because we prioritize listening regularly enough to the voice of the shepherd who leads us to the best possible in life. I pray it in Jesus' name. Amen. Blessings on you. Thanks for being with us today. Have a great week. We'll see you next week.